Good morning to all, and thank you for inviting me to contribute to this meeting of economic ministers in the Pacific. It's a pleasure to be with you today, albeit virtually as part of the IMF's continuing collaboration with Pacific Island authorities. The theme of this gathering, towards a resilient economic recovery and stability, is very timely as we simultaneously emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic and are confronted with new shocks and pronounced economic uncertainty. Let me first provide a brief overview of the global and regional factors affecting the outlook for Asia and the Pacific Islands. In our July update of the World Economic Outlook, we projected slower global growth of 3.2% in 2022 and 2.9% in 2023. These are downward revisions of 0.4 and 0.7%, respectively, from what we were projecting in April, and incorporate war in Ukraine and associated ripple effects across the global economy through trade, commodities markets, and financial linkages. The war in Ukraine has raised food and energy prices globally, putting a particular burden on poorer households. COVID-related disruptions are putting further strain on already stretched supply chains. And as central banks raise interest rates to fight rising inflation, households and firms face higher costs to service their debts. Even so, we do forecast global growth to remain positive this year, but the outlook is extraordinarily uncertain, and the risk of recession has significantly increased in some large economies. Turning to the Asia and Pacific region, the lingering effects of the pandemic remain, even as progress with vaccinations has restored mobility to pre-pandemic levels in many countries. Today, we downgraded our projection for Asian GDP to 4.2% in 2022, compared to 4.9% in April. This reflects the impact of a multitude of shocks, including the slowdown in several large economies and rising global interest rates. Critically, the war in Ukraine continues to elevate food and fuel prices, dampening consumption, pushing more into poverty, and raising the risk of social unrest. The emergence of new COVID variants remains a risk. And as we have seen this summer in so many parts of the world, the effects of climate change and related natural disasters are an ever-present and increasing danger, especially in the Pacific Islands. But equally worrisome are ongoing shifts in geopolitics leading to a fragmentation of supply chains. Taken altogether, it seems that the risks in the short run are overwhelmingly on the downside. How should policymakers respond to these considerable economic challenges? Interest rates will need to be raised faster in more economies as the inflationary pressure broadens across the region. At the same time, governments will realign budgets to ensure access to food and energy for vulnerable households. Governments should generally aim at passing through higher international prices to domestic consumers while protecting the vulnerable. Noting, first, the crucial role of price signals in facilitating adjustment of consumption, and second, the high fiscal burden of price controls. Use of tax policies to provide temporary relief is an option in the absence of effective transfer and social welfare systems, but is an expensive and untargeted choice and should come with a clear end date. While responding to difficult short-term policy trade-offs, it is also essential to focus on policies to address long-term challenges such as climate change adaptation, investing in human capital, enhancing the green transition, and promoting digitalization. Policymakers should resist taking the path of trade restrictions and economic fragmentation. For 30 years, cross-border trade and investment have been key drivers of prosperity, lifting millions out of poverty across Asia and the Pacific. Through multilateralism, we can resist fragmentation and together weave a more resilient, prosperous, and inclusive global economy. This is all the more important for the Pacific Islands, which rely on a stable multilateral trading system for a substantial portion of their needs, particularly food, fuel, and critical investment goods to support growth. The multilateral system has also been the predominant source of external finance over the years, and together with key bilateral partners, the largest source of financial and material support in the wake of highly destructive and increasingly frequent natural disasters. For small developing states like the Pacific Islands, a fragmented global economy represents a significant risk to economic stability, growth, and building the kind of resilience that will be critical in adapting to the challenges of climate change. Let me thank you all again for the opportunity to speak at this important forum. I wish you great success with the remainder of the meeting and look forward to opportunities to meet with you in the near future. Thank you.